Okay, so we proceed with chapter 1, that is stimuli and responses. So in this chapter 1, as we have known that it contains 4 subtopics. So we are trying to discuss about the first subtopic, and then we try to understand what is the meaning of this chapter and their subtopic. Okay, first of all, what is the meaning of stimuli and responses? So in BM, its meaning is rangsangan dan gerak balas. So the stimuli is something that can be detected by us, or something that can make us react to that things. Yeah? So anything that can make us react to that thing, so we call it as a stimuli. Yeah? And then when we respond or we react to that stimulation, so we call it as a responses. So this process, stimuli and responses, is exactly controlled and regulated by what we call as a human nervous system. Okay, so that is the first thing that you must know about stimuli and responses. So means here, stimuli is something that can make living things react. So anything that can make us living things react to that something, so we call it as a stimuli. And then when we react to that stimuli, so we call it as a responses. Okay, so all these things is controlled by what we call in human as a human nervous system. Yeah? Okay, this human nervous system will control and regulate the stimulation and responses process that occur in living organism. So based on this one, we can know that the human nervous system is a very important system in our body that control system in body coordination. So all the process that occur in our body is controlled and regulated and coordinated by what we call as a human nervous system. Yeah? So you must know this human nervous system is very important. If not, something else will happen to our body, to living organism, and then they cannot survive in their life. So at the end, it will cause this living organism to die. Okay, so what is the function and what is the mechanism and what can human nervous system control in our body? So nervous system can control and regulate, coordinate sight, thinking, body movement, and also all the function of organ inside the body. And it will also maintains a balanced internal environment through this process. So, human nervous system is very important in living organism, especially in human body itself. Okay. So this is the first thing that you must know. What is the human nervous system? In BM, we call it as a sistem saraf manusia. Human nervous system. Okay. So as we have learned here, the main concept here, human nervous system control and coordinate. Coordinate all the process in organ and their mechanism. Okay. So this is the most important thing about human nervous system. Okay. After that, what can else we can know about what is the overall picture of human nervous system? Okay. So this human nervous system, exactly its structure can be divided into two. Yeah. Human nervous system, its structure can be divided into two that are, okay, human nervous system can be divided into two that are central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. So this is the classification of human nervous system. Yeah? Central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Okay, so this can be shown in the diagram given here. The structure of human nervous system. Okay, so this one, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. Okay, so central nervous system can be divided into two. The first one is brain and the second one is spinal cord. So central nervous system can be divided into two, brain and spinal cord. So now this one, central nervous system can be divided into two, that is brain and spinal cord. Okay. And then peripheral nervous system can be divided into two, that is cranial nerve and also spinal nerve. Cranial nerve. So this one we can write here. Peripheral nervous system can be divided into two, cranial nerve and spinal nerve. Okay, so This is the classification or division of human nervous system, yeah, central nervous system and peripheral nervous system. And then central nervous system divided into brain and spinal cord, while peripheral nervous system divided into cranial nerve and spinal nerve. Yeah? Okay, so as we can see here, yeah, so this brain, okay, and then this brain will be connected to at the backbones of human body. So inside the backbone of human body consists spinal cord. Yeah? So this is the central nervous system that consists brain, and inside the backbones consists of spinal cord. Yeah? And then the nerve that came out from the brain, we call it as a cranial nerve, while the nerve that came out from the spinal cord, we call it as a spinal nerve. So the cranial nerve and spinal nerve is in the peripheral nervous system. So this is the structure or the classification of human nervous system that you must know. Okay, this is the what is inside the peripheral nervous system, that you have to know more about this one. So peripheral nervous system consists of 12 pairs of cranial nerve connecting the brain to the sensory and internal organ, and then 31 pairs of spinal nerve connecting the spinal cord to the skeletal muscle. So you must remember 12 pairs of cranial nerve is one, 12 pair of cranial nerve, okay, that connecting brain to the sensory and internal organ. So the nerve from brain connect to the sensory and internal organ that consists of 12 pair of cranial nerve, while spinal nerve here consists of 31 pairs that connecting the spinal cord to the skeletal muscle. So you must remember the structure inside the peripheral nervous system. Okay. Okay, now we look into how human nervous system function in order to proceed with their mechanism. So in this diagram shows about how human nervous system function. So this human nervous system control and coordinate organs and parts of the body. So their process is given by this diagram, okay, shown here. Okay, so this is the what is the process or mechanism done by the human nervous system. First of all, nervous system will detect stimuli that is produced, and then when stimuli is detected, it will send the information about the stimulation in the form of impulses. So the word impulses is very important. So these impulses will be going through the nerve, and then these impulses will be interpreted by nervous system, and then after that, nervous system will produce appropriate responses. So this is how the human nervous system function. So I repeat again. First of all, human nervous system will detect stimuli. After that, the information about the stimuli will be sent to the brain in the form of impulses through the nerve. And then when reached when reached at the brain, it will be interpreted by brain, all the impulses, and then after that, brain will produce appropriate responses. So this is the overall or the general function or mechanism of human nervous system. So based on the picture or diagram given here, so this is the examples of daily activities that involve detection of stimuli, and then how it produces a response for the stimuli that is being detected. So this one, for example, given here, okay, collecting garbage, sneezing, and then this one looking or reading, and anything we do in our daily life is exactly controlled and coordinated by human nervous system. Okay, so after that, we will proceed to this one. Okay, what is this? Okay, this one. Okay, voluntary and involuntary action. So the responses of human body to stimuli can be divided into two types. Okay, the first one is voluntary action, and the second one is involuntary action. Yeah. Okay, so now responses can be divided into two. Yeah. Can be divided into two. Okay. Okay, the first one is voluntary action, and second one is involuntary action. Okay, so when nervous system detect stimuli, and at the end of the system, it will produce a responses, and that responses can be divided into two: voluntary action and involuntary action. Yeah. So what is the meaning of this voluntary and involuntary action? Okay, will be given after this. Okay. Before that, this is among the example of action or responses that we can discuss. The first one is reading a book. Okay, this is the responses. B, withdrawing hand from a hot object. Third is peristalsis in esophagus. So this is among the example given here for how we can uh, show about the type of responses of human body to the stimuli that is being detected by human nervous system. So based on this example, can we know which one is a voluntary and which one is involuntary action? So we have to know what is the definition of these two types of responses. So first of all, we will look into what is the voluntary action. Okay, voluntary action are conscious action and conducted under one's will. Okay, so this is very important definition. Conscious action and conducted under one's will means that the action that we have taken is exactly can be controlled by ourselves, and all this action is controlled by brain. We know what we want to do, so this is the voluntary action. So example of voluntary action including reading, writing, speaking. So all this one, eating, drinking, walking, running, exercising. So all this activity or this action is can be controlled by ourselves. If we want to read or don't want to read, or if we want to eat, so all these thing is can be controlled by ourselves. So are controlled by brain, and this action is exactly considered as voluntary action. So this is a diagram to show about how the voluntary action is produced. For example, this one, when we hear about phone rings, and then nervous system will detect the stimulus, and then the impulses will be sent through the nerve to the brain, and then the brain will interpret the impulses, and then when interpreted, it will produce impulses also to the effector. So this effector, whether muscle or gland, will respond to the stimulus that has been detected. So response will be produced. Okay, so this is all what we call of the voluntary action, in which we can control the process that is occur. Okay, so this is the voluntary action. Okay, what is an involuntary action? Okay, involuntary action are actions that occur immediately, without conscious control. Means that we cannot control this action and it happen immediately. So because we cannot control of this action, so we consider this as a involuntary action. So involuntary action can be divided into two. Okay, so involuntary action divided into two, that involving medulla oblongata and also involving spinal cord. And that action that involving spinal cord, we call it as a reflex action. Okay. So medulla oblongata is exactly one part of the brain. One part of the brain. At the lower part of our brain. Okay. This action, for example, heartbeat, breathing, peristalsis, and secretion of saliva, is considered and exactly controlled by medulla oblongata in our brains, and we cannot control this one. And it happens regularly, and we cannot control. So because of this one, involving medulla oblongata, so it is different from this one, the second classification of involuntary action that we call as a reflex action. So reflex action means when something happen, we have to reflect to the stimuli. For example, we will withdraw our hand when we accidentally touch a hot object. So the reflex that is produced, example withdrawing hand when we touch any hot object, is one of the example of reflex action. Okay. Other example is withdrawing food when we accidentally steps on a sharp object. And then when dust enters into our nose, and then suddenly, immediately, we will sneeze. So this is the example of reflex action, and then this involve spinal cord. So this is the classification of involuntary action and their example. So you must remember all this one, the classification and the example of involuntary action. Okay, so this is the diagram to show about the pathway or the mechanism of how involuntary action take place. Yeah? So we can see from the diagram here, if anybody touch on hot object, so what will happen is these fingers that consist receptor of nervous system will detect the stimuli. What is the type of stimuli? What is the stimuli detected? Hot. So when receptor at the finger detect hot, so the impulses will be produced, and these impulses is the information about the hot object will be sent through the nerve, and then through the spinal cord. It will enter into the spinal cord, and then the spinal cord will produce impulses to the effector. Okay, the effector here is a muscle. Muscle. So what will happen? The muscle, when got the impulses from the spinal cord, it will withdraw our hand immediately. So this happen in a second. So this is the pathway or mechanism for the reflex action. So reflex action, you must remember again, it involves only spinal cord, do not involve brain. So in reflex action, it only involve spinal cord. So you can see from the pathway here, it only involve spinal cord. From the finger, the impulses will going through the nerve, and here enter into the spinal cord, and the spinal cord will produce a new impulses to the effector, and then effector will respond to the impulses given, and then it will withdraw hand from the hot object. So that is how the pathway of the reflex action. Okay, the last one is, what is the importance of the network of human nervous system in our daily life? As we have discussed previously, that is if anything happen to the nervous system, it will cause a person to become temporarily, partially, or completely paralyzed. For example, somebody will cannot having any movement because their body, their muscle cannot respond to any stimulation produced. So this is what will happen when someone have a damaged nervous system. Yeah? So what will happen will give a lot of burden to any living organism. Yeah? Okay, so this is example a diagram given. So anyone that have damaged nervous system, so they will have treatment, and sometimes maybe they have to use a breathing machine or something that can make sure that someone can survive. Yeah? So that's all for this topic. So I hope that all of you can do a note on your own about the first subtopic, that is human nervous system. Okay. Lastly, okay, at the end of the subtopic, we have here formative practice. So I want you to do this exercise. Do this exercise in your exercise book. Okay, please do exercise. Okay, please do this exercise in your exercise book. All 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, that's all for today lesson, and I hope you can fulfill this task given, and please make sure you understand and try to understand the concept that we have discussed. Okay, thank you very much.